You don't control your mind controls you. And here's the disturbing reality: neuroscientists estimate that 95% of your daily thoughts are repeats from yesterday, and 80% of those thoughts are negative. You're not thinking, you're running a loop. The same fears, the same doubts, the same mental patterns that kept you stuck yesterday are running again today, and they'll run tomorrow unless you learn to intervene. By the end of this video, I'll reveal the exact metacognitive technique that lets you interrupt thought loops in real time and install new patterns in 30 days. But first, you need to see what being controlled by your default thoughts is costing you. Let me show you what's happening right now. You wake up, and within seconds, your mind is already running. Worries about the day, replaying yesterday's mistakes, judging yourself, planning conversations that will never happen. And you think this is normal, that everyone's mind works this way. But it's not normal, it's conditioned. You've trained your mind to run wild, and now it's running the show. You're not directing your thoughts, you're being dragged by them. And wherever your thoughts go, your life follows. Here's what nobody tells you about your mind. It's not designed to make you happy, it's designed to keep you alive. So it scans for threats, it replays failures to prevent future ones, it catastrophizes to prepare you for worst-case scenarios. And if you let it run unchecked, it will keep you in a constant state of anxiety, doubt, and fear. Not because you're broken, but because you've never learned to manage it. You've been handed the most powerful tool in the universe, your mind, and no one taught you how to use it. Now here's the brutal part. Most people are not living their lives. They're living their thoughts about their lives. The event happens, but it's neutral. Your mind interprets it, assigns meaning, creates a story, and you react to the story, not the event. Someone doesn't text back. The event is neutral, but your mind says they don't care about me, and you feel rejected. Not by the event, by the thought. And if you can't separate the two, you're a prisoner, because you're reacting to a story your mind made up. Let me tell you what an uncontrolled mind costs you. First, peace disappears. You can't relax because your mind won't stop. Second, decisions suffer. You can't think clearly when your mind is cluttered with noise. Third, relationships fail. You're not present because you're lost in thought. Fourth, potential rots. You're so busy thinking about what you should do that you never actually do it. And the gap between where you are and where you could be is entirely determined by your ability to control your mind. Here's what's actually happening in your brain. Your mind has a default mode network. That's the brain activity when you're not focused on a task. And for most people, the default mode is negative rumination. Worrying, rehashing, judging. It's automatic. You're not choosing it. It's just what your brain defaults to when it's idle, and the more you let it run, the stronger the pathways become. You're practicing negativity, and practice makes permanent. So your baseline mental state becomes anxious, stressed, overwhelmed, not because of what's happening, but because of what your mind is doing with what's happening. Now here's the shift that changes everything. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. This sounds simple, but it's the most important distinction you'll ever make. When you think I'm not good enough, that's not you. That's a thought. And thoughts are just mental events. They appear. They pass. You don't have to believe them. You don't have to obey them. You can observe them, acknowledge them, and let them go. But most people are so identified with their thoughts that they can't tell the difference. They think they are their thoughts. And that's the trap. Here's the framework. Mind control has 3 levels. Awareness, intervention, installation. Awareness is noticing when your mind is running wild. Intervention is interrupting the pattern. Installation is deliberately choosing what to think instead. Most people never get past awareness. They notice they're anxious, but they don't intervene, so the anxiety continues. But when you add intervention and installation, you take control. You're not just noticing your mind, you're directing it. Let me show you what awareness looks like. You're spiraling in negative thoughts, and instead of being consumed by them, you catch yourself. I'm spiraling right now. You've created distance. You're not the spiral. You're the person observing the spiral. And observation is the first step to control, because you can't change what you don't see. And most people are so lost in their thoughts that they don't see them. They're living inside the movie instead of watching it from the audience. But here's the trap. Awareness alone isn't enough. Some people become hyper-aware of their negative thoughts and think that awareness will make them stop. It won't. Awareness just shows you the problem. Intervention solves it, and intervention is simple. When you catch the negative thought, you interrupt it, out loud if possible. Stop. You're breaking the pattern. You're signaling to your brain that this thought doesn't get to run unchecked. And interruption creates a gap, a space. And in that space, you can choose differently. Here's the psychology. Your thoughts are not random. They follow patterns, neural pathways. And pathways are built through repetition. Every time you think I'm not good enough, you're strengthening that pathway. But every time you interrupt it, you're weakening it. You're starving the pathway. And when you replace it with a different thought, you're building a new pathway. You're not just stopping the negative, you're installing the positive. And installation is what makes the change permanent. Now here's where it gets interesting. Most people try to control their mind through suppression. Don't think about the elephant. And what happens? You think about the elephant, because the brain doesn't process negatives well. When you say don't think about anxiety, your brain hears anxiety and focuses on it. So suppression backfires, but redirection works. Instead of don't think about anxiety, you think what am I grateful for right now? You're not suppressing, you're redirecting. And redirection trains the brain to go somewhere new. Here's the neuroscience. Every thought creates a pattern of neural activation. And if you repeat the thought, the pattern strengthens. This is neuroplasticity. But here's the key: you can use neuroplasticity intentionally. You can choose what to strengthen. Most people are passively strengthening whatever their default thoughts are. But you can actively strengthen thoughts that serve you. Gratitude, confidence, focus. You're not waiting for your mind to change. You're changing it through deliberate practice. Let me give you the protocol. Step 1. Set a mental checkpoint. 3 times a day, you pause and ask, what am I thinking right now? You're creating awareness. Step 2. If the thought is negative or unhelpful, interrupt it. Say stop out loud. Step 3. Redirect. Ask what would be more useful to think right now. Step 4. Install the new thought. Repeat it 3 times. You're building the new pathway. Step 5. Track it. Write down every time you successfully interrupt and redirect. You're collecting evidence that you can control your mind. Here's what happens when you execute this protocol. Week 1, you're catching maybe 1 or 2 spirals a day, but you're catching them. Week 2, you're interrupting faster. The negative thought appears, you stop it, you redirect. Week 3, the old patterns are losing strength. They still appear, but they don't grip you. Week 4, you've built new default thoughts. Your mind still generates negativity, but it's not the dominant pattern anymore. And by week 8, you're not fighting your mind, you're directing it. But here's the part most people miss. You can't just control your mind when it's spiraling. You have to train it when it's calm. This is called mental conditioning. Athletes don't practice free throws during the game. They practice beforehand so the skill is automatic during pressure. Same with your mind. You practice redirecting thoughts during calm moments so the skill is available during stress. You're training the reflex. Here's what elite performers do that most people don't. They schedule mind training sessions, 10 minutes a day, where they deliberately practice observing thoughts without reacting. They sit, they notice what their mind does, and they practice letting thoughts pass without grabbing onto them. They're building the skill of non-attachment. And non-attachment is freedom, because when you're not attached to your thoughts, they can't control you. Now here's the secret method I promised you. It's called the thought label technique. When a thought appears, you label it, not as good or bad, just as what it is. Worry thought, self-criticism thought, planning thought. You're creating objectivity. You're not saying the thought is wrong. You're just naming it, and naming creates distance. You're not I'm worthless. You're I'm having the thought that I'm worthless. And that distance is power, because now you can choose whether to engage with it or let it pass. Here's what happens when you label consistently. Thoughts lose their grip. They're just thoughts, not truth, not commands, just mental events that come and go. And when they're just events, you're free. You can have the thought I'm going to fail and still take action, because you're not believing the thought, you're just noticing it. And noticing doesn't require obedience. You're the observer, not the servant. But here's the trap. Some people label so much they become detached from all thoughts, even useful ones. The goal is not to stop thinking. The goal is to stop being controlled by thinking. You still use your mind for planning, problem solving, creating, but you're using it intentionally. You're not being used by it. You're in the driver's seat, and the mind is the vehicle, not the driver. Here's the identity shift you need. You're not someone with a chaotic mind. You're someone who's learning to direct their mind. And direction is a skill, a trainable, improvable, life-changing skill. You don't need a different brain. You need to learn how to use the one you have. And usage is determined by practice. So you practice observing. You practice interrupting. You practice redirecting. And practice creates mastery. Let me show you what happens if you don't take control. 10 years from now, you're still being run by the same thought loops, still anxious about the same things, still stuck in the same mental patterns, because you never learned to intervene. You just let your default thoughts run your life, and default thoughts create a default life. Reactive, anxious, small, not because you're incapable of more, but because your mind convinced you that you are. Here's the truth: your mind is a tool, the most powerful tool you have. But if you don't learn to control it, it will control you. And most people are being controlled. They're living inside their thoughts like prisoners inside a cell they don't realize they have the key to. The key is awareness. The door is intervention. And freedom is on the other side. Now let me tell you what you're losing every day you let your mind run wild. You're losing peace in the present moment. You're losing clarity in decision making. You're losing presence in relationships. You're losing the ability to enjoy anything because your mind is always somewhere else, worrying about the future, regretting the past, never here. And here is the only place life actually happens. Here's the protocol for today. Right now, you're going to pause and notice what your mind is doing. What thoughts are appearing? Don't judge them, just notice. Then you're going to interrupt. Say "I see you" to the thought. Then redirect. Ask, "What would I rather think about right now?" And choose. You're not waiting for the thought to change, you're changing it. And this one act of redirection is the beginning of control. Because controlling your mind is not about stopping thoughts, it's about choosing which ones to follow. Not about eliminating negativity, but about not letting negativity drive. Not about perfection, but about direction. And direction is determined by the thoughts you feed. So feed the thoughts that serve you, starve the ones that don't. And watch what happens when you become the director of your mind instead of the audience. Control your mind, not by force, but by awareness, interruption, and redirection. Not once, but daily, until control becomes your default. Until your mind works for you instead of against you. Until thoughts are suggestions, not commands. And that shift starts now. What thought are you interrupting first?